Alright, this is John Kola with okraw.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you, and I'm traveling the world here, and today I find myself in beautiful Aguada, Puerto Rico, and the reason why I'm here is because I'm hanging out and visiting the Wigmore Natural Health Institute that was founded literally over 50 years ago, and in this location has been operating continuously for like 27 years. It's amazing they're still standing, they're still here, and they're teaching some of the original work of Wigmore. Many of you guys may be familiar with wheatgrass and getting wheatgrass shots and sprouting, right? Well, she basically brought that out into the world and introduced that into the world into a big way, and that's why we have wheatgrass shots today at your local Whole Foods, because of Wigmore. So here at the Institute, they don't just teach a raw foods diet, they teach a special kind of diet, a diet that I believe you guys should be eating actually instead of and more than just simply raw foods. So what we're gonna do today is actually we're gonna go ahead and go to one of the buildings, and I'm gonna see if I can hunt down one of the core instructors here that teaches a lot of the classes, who's literally an expert on this subject matter on why you should eat more than simply just raw foods. So I got to hunt down Kaelash Neels, one of the core instructors here at the Wigmore Institute. And we have actually a variety of foods that we're going to show you guys today that you guys might already be eating, but I want to let you guys know that there's a differentiation between some of these foods. Some of these foods are actually better than the other foods. And I want you guys to focus on the best foods. But before we get into that, we got to introduce the special guest today, Kaelash Neels. He's originally from Germany. He's actually quite a smart guy. I've actually known him for probably about 15 years. He's actually been on a raw living foods diet since 1995. So he's been doing this quite a long time. And actually he's been working at, and actually specifically working his way up here at Wigmore, from working in the greenhouse to teaching some classes to all the way where he is now. And he basically teaches a lot of different parts of the program at various times of the year. And yeah, he teaches a lot of stuff. So he's definitely one of the main experts here at the Wigmore Natural Health Institute. So I brought him on today to show you guys the differences of raw foods and living foods. And above all else, I want you guys to incorporate more living foods in your diet. I think it's really sad that these days nobody really even hears about living foods anymore. It's all about raw foods, and you don't hear about living foods. And when I started, there wasn't a lot of books on raw foods back then. The main books I got were Wigmore living food lifestyle books. And that's what I originally learned when I got into this lifestyle and diet. And it's really important that you guys incorporate more living foods into your diet for various reasons. And we're gonna ask Kaelash, why should somebody incorporate more living foods into their raw foods diet, or just their diet in general? If they just eat standard American, why should they have more living foods? Like, what could happen when you eat these foods? Do you turn into a monkey?
Well, living foods, one of the main things that makes a living food are the enzymes. So there's thousands of enzymes. They have identified 5,000 and given them names. There's a lot more. If you don't know what an enzyme is a protein that has biological activity, and it speeds up the reaction in the cell. Enzymes are essential for healing, are essential to reduce inflammation, and so many other things. So when you cook your food, when you heat your food above certain temperatures, then you're actually losing the enzymes. And there's many practices that one can do to actually increase the enzymes in the food.
Cool. So now that you guys know what living foods are, they contain the enzymes, and enzymes are a reason why raw foods are really important. Kaelash, what will happen to somebody maybe if they incorporate more enzymatically rich foods into their diet?
Let me give you a practical example. So we had a student here at this institute. Our programs are 2 weeks long, and when she came the first day, she looked exhausted. She said that she was exhausted. She said that it was even hard for her to come here. She was so exhausted. And in the morning, every day, she would rather have rolled back into bed rather than out of bed. She lost her love of life. She lost her passion. She didn't even know anymore what she liked. And she said she had difficulties with most of her kids and family members and just didn't feel alive, you know, and aches and pains. So she came here, and it was just amazing, that transformation that she went through. Within a few days, she said, like, most of her pains are gone, like joint pain. Most of this is anti-inflammatory. She started feeling a lot better. And also she said she woke up in the morning. I mean, we start pretty early here. She woke up in the morning and felt just great waking up and getting out of bed and showing up in class. And she said one of the main changes really that she saw was on her emotional level. I mean, physically, yes, but emotionally, she started to communicate more lovingly with her family. She just felt more alive, more connected, and from that place she improved her relationship with her whole family, actually. So that's pretty incredible to see that.
Wow, and I know many of you guys may feel like that, like you wake up in the morning and you just want to roll back into bed and you don't want to do anything, right? You're literally like, you're not lifeless, but you're lifeless, right? You just don't want to do much. You're like a big blob, right? We've all felt like that before. And maybe because you don't have the life in your food. If you're heating your food, if you're cooking your food, if you're eating processed foods, all the enzymes are demolished, they're gone. The problem is the enzymes, they can cause food reactions in the food and cause it to go bad. And so most processors want to kill all the enzymes, right? If you're drinking a pasteurized juice, all the enzymes are gone. And that's why I encourage you guys to make your own fresh juices and other things that are enzymatically rich. So Kaelash, we have many different foods here on the table, and some of these are actually only just raw foods, which some of you guys may be eating already, but some of them are actually living foods. So you want to maybe explain, or actually first we'll go over some of the different foods here and how, even like this, we have some cabbage, but we have cabbage in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different forms. Why don't we explain how we get the cabbage and at what point is it living or raw?
Okay, so for example, a seed, like we have some seeds here. These seeds, they have not been pasteurized, they have not been heated, they have not been irradiated. So these seeds, they're raw and they have a spark of life force energy inside of them. And they have enzymes that are in their dormant state. So now, when we soak those seeds and we start sprouting those seeds, we activate the enzymes, we release the enzyme inhibitors, and the miracle begins. The seed begins to sprout. And in that process, actually, a lot of the nutrients, they change a lot. So, for example, here, I want to show you, we have the sprouts. And these sprouts, they're super easy to digest. The proteins, the concentrated proteins, they're broken down into their simpler form, into amino acids. Complex carbohydrates are broken down into their simpler form. Simple sugars, easy to digest, and concentrated fats are broken down into their simpler form, fatty acids, making them much easier to digest. Also, if you look at this, this is an example like of a raw food. You wouldn't eat this seed just raw like this, you couldn't really. But let's say you're eating nuts, like you put nuts in your salad, or you eat anything that has nuts that have not been soaked and activated, like the enzymes activated, then you would be eating something that has low water content and the enzymes are in their dormant state, and it's relatively hard to digest because all of those macronutrients, the proteins, the carbohydrates, and the fats, they're in their concentrated form, making them pretty hard to digest. So if you soak and sprout them, then you get something like this, these sprouts, and they're really easy to digest. Now they're also water rich, and they're very high in enzymes. So some of the nutrients, they go up, like the B vitamins go from 300% to 1,500%. A raw lentil has pretty close to 0 vitamin C, but then when you sprout it, the lentils become one of the best sources of vitamin C. So many things change, the nutrients change dramatically, even the enzymes change. So in a raw seed, you have mostly acid-forming minerals. And when you soak and sprout the seed, they change, they become more alkaline-forming. And so now the next stage, so we have the raw seed, we have the sprout, and then the next stage would be here a microgreen. And these are planted actually, can be planted in soil or using the coconut fiber. And then next, you would get, well, this would take some time, of course, but you would get a head of cabbage.
Or the leafy greens and then the head of cabbage.
Yes, exactly. Thanks for adding that. So now, if this was a head of cabbage that you bought in the supermarket, we would consider it a raw food.
But it's still alive, right?
Well, it is alive. It has some enzymes, but it may have been shipped from somewhere across the country. It may have been refrigerated, so a lot of the nutrients are lost in that process. Now, if you were to go outside and cut your head of cabbage and eat it fresh like this, we would consider it a living food.
Now, what if you go to the farmer's market and you ask the farmer and they picked it that morning, you buy it and then you bring it home and then you eat it?
That's a living food.
Okay, so how many days could elapse before it turns into a raw food and that's no longer living?
Well, it depends a lot also on how you store it. So some of the things, if you pick them and you leave them outside, then they still maintain a lot of their nutrients. I mean, if you have a leaf of lettuce, for example, and you put it in water, you leave it outside for a short period of time, it will still keep its vitality.
Well, if it's in water, it's still going to grow like
yes.
the whole head if it's not just individual leaves.
Right. And as soon as you put things into the fridge, you start losing a lot of nutrients and a lot of the enzymes. And most things that you buy in the health food store, they have been refrigerated at one point or another.
Shipped and trucked and all this kind of stuff.
Exactly, and sometimes treated even, And so here's the good news. We can take this raw head of cabbage, we can shred it using a juicer like Omega or some other kind of juicer, and we can make sauerkraut. And this...
That's from Germany.
Is from Germany. Yes, that's right. And people say, that's why you like it so much. A lot of people don't like it too much. And I say, it tastes great, doesn't it taste excellent? They say, well, of course, you're German, So some people love it, some people don't like it so much, but it doesn't matter. It's highly nutritious.
So you're turning a raw food into a living food
Into a living
again.
food.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? So it starts as a raw food, the seed. We get a living food, the sprout, the microgreen. Living when it's still fresh, but then in the store when you buy it, it may merely be a raw food, and then you can process it and make a living food again.
So should we eat all our foods fermented? Because if you're buying food in the store, we could turn them living again?
You should not, and here's why. You probably know that we should be eating a certain amount of alkaline forming foods and a certain amount of acid forming foods. So the cultured, or some people call them fermented foods, they are actually slightly acid forming, but it's good because they increase the acidity in your stomach, which should be the stomach, the fluids, the gastric juices, they have to be acidic. So we need to have a certain amount of acid forming foods, but the healthy form, I'm not talking about soda or animal products. A lot of them might be or are acid forming. I'm talking about a good source that's rich friendly bacteria and probiotics and vitamin C, such as the sauerkraut, and other foods like Rejuvilac, which we use, can be made from cabbage, we use gluten-free grains like quinoa, amaranth, millet here in this lifestyle to get the friendly bacteria. And we also make seed cheese and seed yogurt, but we highly recommend not to eat a whole lot of that. So with the sauerkraut, no more than 2 tablespoons per meal. And with the seed cheese and the seed yogurt also, like 2 tablespoons a day, because they're also pretty high in fat. And what's the other one? The Rejuvilac. So we recommend not to drink more than 2 cups to maintain that 80-20 balance.
So what are some of the benefits of the fermented foods, Kaelash, besides the enzymes and besides it being living?
Okay, so one great benefits, and Captain Cook, he knew this already, he took fermented foods like sauerkraut on their trips because a lot of the sailors, they suffered from scurvy, vitamin C deficiency, and actually the studies show that those fermented foods, the sauerkraut and the Rejuvilac, contains as much vitamin C or more than orange juice.
Wow.
Also, it is very high in vitamin E. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. And if you look at the name, Rejuvilac, rejuvenate, Rejuvilac, it's like the lac, the lactic acid that rejuvenates you, and it's an antioxidant. And so really aging to a large degree is a process of oxidation. You know, like things get rusty, so there's oxidation, and we say sometimes, oh, I feel rusty, things aren't the same, you know. And you are, I don't want to say you're not necessarily reversing that process, but you're definitely retarding it. And actually, I'd say in some cases you're reversing it and you're rejuvenating your body, everything. You're rejuvenating all the cells of your body through the cultured and fermented foods. But not only, of course, it's a lifestyle. There's other foods. There's a lot of other practices that are important in the living foods lifestyle, which Wigmore developed.
Yeah, they teach a lot more here than just the food, anyways, and we're not going to get into that in this video because this is a big topic unto itself. So Kaelash, we learned about the cabbage and how it goes from seed to sprouts to microgreens to cabbage back into a living food, but we have a lot of other ingredients here that people may be wondering, like, is it living or just raw? So for example, this squash here, is this a raw food or a living food?
Okay, so if you just picked it, like you said, if you go to the farmer...
Like, no, I don't go to the farmer, Kaelash. I have a front yard and a backyard garden, man. I pick it in my garden.
But let's say one of the viewers doesn't grow it. You know, not everybody's as advanced as you are.
Well, everybody should.
Yes.
You learn how to grow your own food, and that's why I teach it, because it's so important.
So if you go to the store and buy it, or somebody else, I know you don't. If somebody goes to the store and bought this, it's not a living food anymore.
Okay.
Unless they had just put it on the shelf and the farmer just delivered it to the store. So if it's been sitting on the shelf, we would consider it a raw food, not a living food. And the same is true for some of these other foods that you see here.
Yeah.
We would call them raw foods when they're not super fresh, and especially once they have been refrigerated.
So how about these avocados? These avocados are right off the tree here in Puerto Rico, never been refrigerated.
Right, so actually I picked them myself. I picked them on Monday. So these are considered a living food.
Even though it's been a couple days since the time you picked them.
It has, and they're actually, their nutritional value is still rising, because these are still hard. You know, so they're still going toward their nutritional peak, and then once they reach the nutritional peak, they should be consumed.
So is it a nutritional peak or enzymatic peak? Because what I understand is once the avocado is plucked from the tree, right, nutrients cannot flow into the avocado, so it's not like going to make any more nutrients, although the nutrients in here may change.
Yes, so something that's pretty amazing, like if we compare this with or think about the sauerkraut, we put 100% straight cabbage, nothing else, just cabbage through the juicer, and what comes out is the shredded cabbage, which tastes like shredded cabbage, and then 3 days later you harvest it and it doesn't taste anything than just, it doesn't taste like shredded cabbage. It totally changes. It draws enzymes from the air. So foods have the ability of drawing.
Is it enzymes or bacteria from
It's
the
bacteria,
air?
yes. It's a good point. It's bacteria from the air.
But they're creating the enzymes.
That are creating the enzymes. So I missed a little step here, so thanks for...
No problem.
Yes. So it actually, the shredded cabbage has very few enzymes. But then when it's fermenting, the enzymes increase. Yes.
So does that happen also in the avocado, for example? The enzymes increase or change?
You know, it's a good question. And really one of our big dreams is to have a laboratory here, and eventually we'll do it, we'll get one, and then I would be able to answer your question a little bit better. And my sense is that the enzymes are increasing. And
because they got to catalyze the ripening process.
Yes, exactly. And it's totally amazing to me how you can pick something off the tree that's hard as wood. I mean, really hard. And then you let it sit out for a few days, and then it gets soft and increases its water content, at least it seems that way, and it just becomes something really delicious. I mean, you know how terrible this tastes if you eat a raw avocado like this that's really unripe. But then once it's ripe, it's like something totally different. And it also, it still has the seed, right? We take the seed or the pit out and we could grow a tree from it. So there is a unit of life inside of any fruit really that's connected to its seed. So this is really a whole universe in itself, which makes the ripening process possible. Pretty amazing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's quite unfortunate that most food you would buy in the store, especially avocados, imported or even from California in the distribution chain at your local health food store or supermarket, you know, basically any food in the food chain that you're buying has been refrigerated. So basically if you're shopping at the grocery store, based on what Kaelash is saying, you're just buying raw food. So that's a reason why it's important to shop at your local farmer's market. Now, not all farmer's markets, people pick things fresh, because sometimes they pick things the day before, put in the fridge, and then they bring it to the farmer's market. So it's very important to ask the farmers, when did you pick this?
Exactly.
And then ask them, once you picked it, how did you store it? Oh, we put it in our cooler. Then it's raw, and if you want to support that farmer, go for that. And if you want to find another farmer that maybe harvested it and he woke up at 6 a.m. that morning, brought it to the market at 10 a.m., that's the kind of farmers I want to support, that has a higher quality food with more enzymatic activity, and it's a living food. But then beyond that, grow your own food, and that's why I grow my own food, because I don't want to just eat raw foods, as much as my channel is called OK Raw. I want to eat living foods that's high in enzymes, and more importantly to me, it's the life force and vitality in the foods that I feel different when I pick lettuce out of my garden and eat it than when I buy lettuce at the store, even organic lettuce at the store, and eat it. I feel much more alive and happy. And so, do you want to make any comments on this?
Yes,
Kaelash?
I'd like to make a comment. So here at the Wigmore Institute in Puerto Rico, everything is prepared fresh every single day. And not only prepared, but even picked. Almost everything, I'd like to say. So some things that don't grow so well, like carrots, we've got these organic carrots. You know, some things we buy here. But as you can see, we're growing our own microgreens, and we eat them the day we pick them. We wouldn't even eat them the next day. We eat everything the same day. And what do we have here? We grow things like watermelon, we grow papaya, we grow avocados, we grow a lot of these things and lots of sprouts. So what the students are eating here is picked the same day as they eat it and prepared fresh every single meal.
So nothing is refrigerated. So it's all living.
It is very hot here in Puerto Rico, right? Especially now in the summer. You know, not like hot as in some other places. It's pretty comfortable hot, but still some things have to be in the fridge, like the Rejuvenac, you know, which takes three days to ferment, and then it's also good for another about 5 to 7 days. So some of the things, we make them fresh most of the time, but once in a while, some things that we know maintain their enzymes and their nutrition, we put some things in the fridge, like the Rejuvenac, the sauerkraut, because they store really really well. And then some of the sprouts we store in the fridge, but not for long.
So even if the sprouts you grew, Kaelash, is stored in the fridge, aren't they still considered a living food? Because the sprouts, they're still growing even as they're sitting there. When it's colder, they don't grow as fast, but they're still growing, so they can still be living, right?
Yes, absolutely. They actually continue to grow in the fridge.
Right.
You can even see it. So these continue to grow in the fridge, these sprouts, and they're also, like I mentioned with the avocado, they're a complete unit of life. Like you can use that and let it grow into a cabbage or whatever it is that you're sprouting. So it's a complete food. You don't cut anything, you know?
Yeah, but like if the microgreens were cut, then that turns into a raw food.
Absolutely. So the microgreens, at the beginning, it would be a living food. But then after a few days, it will turn into a raw food because they lose most of their...
After they're cut.
That's right. So anytime you cut, the nutrition goes down much faster. Now with the fruits, because they're connected to their seeds, like this watermelon and the sprouts, they stay fresh longer, maintain their enzymes. They're like a universe, a unit in themselves, complete.
So I think it's very important for you guys to get your produce as fresh as possible so you could eat more living foods instead of raw foods so you could get some of the benefits. So Kaelash, here's an interesting example. Here's a tomato, and here's dehydrated tomatoes. And so the tomato, this one was grown locally here, so if it came in on the day and you ate it, it'd be living, but these have been refrigerated, and so now these are considered raw. But what about these dehydrated tomatoes that you guys did here under, at 105 degrees? Are these living or are these raw?
That's a good question. And this is, I don't really have a black and white answer to that. Supposedly, based on the research that we have, if you dehydrate it under 118 or 115 degrees, we do here at about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, then you still have the enzymes intact. of course, you lose the water, which is an important component, actually, carrier of many of the nutrients. So you lose some antioxidants, you lose certain nutrients, but because you still have the enzymes, we consider it a living food.
So let me get this straight. We're going from a living tomato that came in, we refrigerate it, then we cut it and dehydrate it, this is raw, and then it turns into a living food again?
So the enzymes do not go up. Once it's in the fridge, even when you dehydrate it, you don't change the enzymes, right? If you sprout something, you know, for example, these seeds, they can have been stored, they should have been stored in cold temperatures to maintain their viability. And then you can sprout them and turn them into a living seed, and there's actually a chemical reaction and a big transformation. So no, you don't have that. If you dehydrate, you don't have a huge chemical reaction and all of that.
It doesn't increase, but it...
No. Well, it concentrates some nutrients,
of course, yes.
Because you're taking out the water and you concentrate some things. You concentrate some of the calories, for example.
And so we have some more dehydrated foods, actually some falafels actually that are delicious. And if you want to learn how to make these living food falafels, check down below. Actually, Kaelash made a video on this, and actually check out, he has a dressing recipe too for the falafels. These are dried are good. I had one earlier because I was hungry. And then we have some actually granola here. And so you want to talk about these dehydrated foods. Are these dehydrated foods raw or living?
That's a good question. So we go through a lot of work making these falafel. You know, they contain different seeds,
I'm gonna try one.
like flax seeds and different like sunflower. And so we go through a big process, which most people wouldn't, but we really care. We really want to give our participants the maximum nutrients possible, and also for them to eat something that they really enjoy eating, that might remind them of some of the foods that they usually eat. So we go through the top trouble of actually soaking the seeds, so activating the enzymes, like in the flax, for example, then rinsing them, then dehydrating them in the dehydrator.
So you're sprouting them first?
Yes, we're activating them. Sprouting, you don't see a tail, but we sprout them, we activate the enzymes, they dehydrate it, and then they're ground into the powder and then used right away. Like, we wouldn't grind it and then use it a month or two later. Look, like you can buy the flax ready. No, we dehydrate it, and then when we're just about to use it in the falafel or other recipes, then we grind it. So we do that if we want any kind of flour, like flax flour or sunflower, any of those. So it's quite a bit of work, actually.
And they're quite good, actually.
Yes, so usually they're not as dry, by the way. They're moist on the inside.
This is good to me.
They're pretty good like this too, yes. And
what about the granola there?
The granola, so this is buckwheat that has been soaked half an hour and then sprouted for about 25 hours. And then we make a dressing, like a fruit dressing, blending, for example, apples with strawberries to keep it more on the low glycemic side. We blend that, maybe a little bit of cinnamon. I prefer to use the sticks as opposed to the powder. So basically, it's a fruit dressing, and then we pour that over the sprouted buckwheat, and that we put in the dehydrator. And then you can either make bars, or you can make a cereal or granola, add other things if you'd like to. So actually, these two foods, like the falafel and the granola, are not foods that you will see every day on the menu.
Why?
Because
they're so good.
They are good. They're good.
I could eat a lot of those falafels.
Yes, and many people could, and many people would overeat on them. You know, so we prefer to focus on fresh, water-rich, high-enzyme foods.
So this is high enzyme, but it doesn't have the water-rich parts.
Exactly.
So the living foods component and the enzymes, the life force, is only one component of a food you guys should be concerned about. So Kaelash, I think this is a good point actually at this point. So why don't you explain some of the differences between the raw foods and the living foods? Because I know a lot of you guys might be getting it, but some of you guys might not get it yet.
Okay, so let's black on white.
All right, yeah, on the whiteboard there.
Let's put raw on this side.
Okay.
Versus living on that side. Okay, so what did we say? Raw foods in general have less enzymes.
Yep.
Right? And living foods Enzymes.
More enzymes.
More enzymes. Enzymes, here we go. Raw foods tend to have a low water content.
Well, what about like a banana, Kaelash? A banana is a raw food, right? It's actually fairly low water. It's like 70% water content.
It is, and we don't use a lot of bananas here.
But what about, so at the same point though, these are considered living food, but they're low water content.
Yes, that's right. So there's exceptions. It's not black and white.
I see.
And we use the granola like once or twice in a 2-week program.
That's sad, it's so good.
And it's served with almond or hazelnut milk.
Oh, that's delicious. So then they make it water rich.
Yes.
So don't just eat the dehydrated foods alone.
So these dehydrated foods, they're served just a few times throughout the program. So I would agree with you, some of the living foods, like the dehydrated
So this is in
foods,
general then?
in general. So, but if you look across, like if you look at all the sprouts, for example, if you take an almond, and if it's a raw almond that you bought, hopefully it's really raw, that you bought, and if you eat it like this in its raw state, it has a low water content.
Yes.
Now, if you were to soak that almond, which we do here, all seeds at all times are always soaked and the enzymes are activated, then you may have noticed it doubles in size. And why does it double in size? It doesn't grow on its own. So you could use a pasteurized almond and it would also grow, and you'd see the tail increase, but it's not growing. The tail is not growing. The whole almond grows because the water, it expands. Exactly. And so you're increasing the water content in that almond. So low water, high or more water, we could say. Get another color here, man. Higher water content.
In general.
In general, there is exceptions.
Of course.
There is exceptions. High water, the nutrients are easier to digest.
And they're easier to digest. Why? So I know a lot of fruitarians out there that say, man, I'm eating raw foods, the fruit is the best food in the world, we don't need to eat sprouts, it's not our natural food. What would you say to that?
What I would say, harder to digest.
Fruit's the easiest thing to digest, not sprouts.
Good, and we do use fruits in this lifestyle. So we do use fruits. Well, depends on the sprouts. Like these here are really easy to digest.
Easier to digest than a banana?
Easy, I would say so.
Really?
Yeah, these have a much...
Provided you chew them well.
Yeah, they have a high water content, high enzyme content.
Oh, high enzyme content, which is going to make the digestion easier, yes.
If you were to eat other seeds that you activated, like an almond versus a banana, and eat that, it might be a little harder to digest, you know. So it depends.
Yeah, but also, in general, easier to digest, yes.
Right. So when I hear of what many raw food is, or people who eat a lot of raw food, when I hear what they eat, is like cauliflower, broccoli, cashews, olive oil, cabbage maybe, and in combinations that are hard to digest. So in this lifestyle, we also follow the food combining rules, and so we don't mix too concentrated proteins or concentrated proteins with complex carbohydrates and so on and so forth. And so that also helps to make things easier to digest. So in this lifestyle, you know, a cabbage, we talked about the cabbage. If you have a head of cabbage, that's relatively hard to digest. Now, if you turn that into a sauerkraut, the sauerkraut is really easy to digest.
Yeah.
Now, if you have broccoli or cauliflower, that is relatively hard to digest for most people.
Well, yeah, especially if it's just raw from the store, because it's old and it's picked like really late, and the stuff out of my garden where I snap it off and it's so tender, way easier to digest, or even easier than that, grow some cauliflower or broccoli microgreens.
So then what you could do is you could shred the cabbage and cut some carrots into it, maybe some cauliflower, some broccoli, and let the cabbage ferment it, and it becomes very soft and becomes easy to digest.
With the enzymes, yes.
Exactly. So in this lifestyle, we process things a certain way, which makes things easier to digest, actually.
Yes, I think that's very important, especially in this day and age when people have digestive challenges from eating the wrong foods for so many years. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I like juicing, because juicing is so easy to digest. So, Kaelash, how does juicing fit into the Ann Wigmore Living Foods lifestyle?
Yes, it does. Actually, it does. And what we juice here exclusively are green things. One of the cornerstones of this program is wheatgrass juice. So that's a juice.
Yes.
So that's juiced. And then we also do green juices, like for example, celery, cucumber, romaine lettuce, sunflower microgreens or other microgreens. So we do that, but we don't do any sweet juices. You know, no apple, we don't even juice watermelon much anymore. In the past, you saw it a lot here. But because so many people are coming and with all kinds of issues, and more than in the past actually, they're asking for us to lower the fruit content, to lower the glycemic, increase the low glycemic index fruits. So it's really something that we're responding to because people are asking for it, you know.
So Kaelash, you shared a lot with me and my viewers about the differences between raw living foods, and it kind of dawned on me that really the living foods are things that people could grow themselves at home. I mean, start from a seed, and that's where the really biggest bang for the buck comes in, right? When you take that raw seed and grow that into the sprouts, the microgreens, and the plants, it's gonna have a lot more nutrition, especially if they're fresh picked and fresh harvested without being refrigerated, without being shipped. Is this kind of true?
Absolutely. And the beauty of it is you can do it in your own home. If you're comfortable at the temperatures that you have at home, in the winter, in the summer, anytime, your sprouts will also like it. You know, so somewhere in the 60s, 70s, 80s are still okay. You can sprout. I mean, you wouldn't probably have the temperatures in the low 30s in your apartment. The sprouts wouldn't like it. So where you're comfortable, you can sprout. You can ferment things in those temperatures. It is so simple, really. And if you buy sprouts in a store, they're pretty expensive, and they have been stored, they have been refrigerated, and you know.
And they may be treated with chlorine and other things that kill the bad bacteria because there's sprout outbreaks.
So anybody can really start sprouting today in their own home. It's so simple and it's inexpensive, and you don't need to buy a lot of equipment, really. All you need is like a sprout bag or a jar and rubber band and mash it. I mean, it's so simple, so easy. So anybody can start growing some of these things today in their own home.
Grow your own living foods. So Kaelash, we learned about some of the different foods that are on the Wigmore Living Foods lifestyle, and you guys learned a small amount, but I want my viewers to know all the different foods so that they could concentrate and eat some of the foods that you feed the people that come here, because you get some amazing results and have turned around many people's health and helped them detox.
Yes, that's true. So we use a lot of sprouts in this lifestyle, which you see on this, we've shown you before. And then we also use microgreens. And actually there's one food, it's called energy soup. And the main ingredient in that are microgreens. You know, we use the sunflower microgreens and the buckwheat microgreens. So that's basically a huge salad that you blend into a little bowl. There's other key ingredients in the energy soup, which we made a clip.
Yeah, I'll put a link down below. Actually, the clip, I think Kaelash and I were in this very kitchen like 7 years ago. It's non-HD, sorry, but I'll put a link down below to that. But hey, in the energy soup, there's a lot of papaya. And papaya, when ripening, it's rich in the papaya enzyme known as papain, right? So that's a living food, right?
It is a living food. And you know, one thing that we changed over the last years, people are asking for less fruit than they have in the past. So in the past, the papaya was blended into the energy soup, into one bowl actually. We had one energy soup with papaya and one without. But now it's all without, and the papaya is on the side. And then people can choose to put it or not, exactly.
And then you don't blend it and you don't oxidize it when blending.
Yep, yes, yes.
All right, and what are some of the other foods on the Wigmore Living Foods lifestyle?
So I mentioned the wheatgrass juice, the energy soup, green juices, fermented or cultured foods like the sauerkraut, the Rejuvelac, the seed cheese, and the seed yogurt. And then we have salads on some days, and we have some dehydrated foods in small amounts like falafel, veggie burger. We make a raw pizza with a raw pizza crust. And we use a small amount of fruits, like on one day there's watermelon, another day there's pineapple with berries mixed together. We use apples. So we use some fruits, and actually what you see a lot are these limes, which are low glycemic also. And they make pretty much anything taste better.
So Kaelash, I know I have a lot of people that are really into a fruit-based diet, right? And so why don't you guys serve more fruit if fruit's like the best food on the entire planet? Yeah,
I wouldn't disagree. I love fruit, and you know, I'm very athletic, and exercise a lot, I'm very active, and I digest it really well, and I never had any serious health conditions. Whereas many people that come here, they come here because of some kind of really serious health condition. Some people come here and they have a week to live. When the doctor tells them, your cancer, stage 4, we give you a week. Or the doctor tells some of the diabetics that they have to take their leg off. And then they come here like as the last resort. And so we have some extreme, not everybody that comes here is in that situation, but we have some extreme cases, and based on our observations, really, and their feedback.
And over 50 years of doing this.
Yes, the first institute that Anne Wigmore founded, she founded in 1963 in Boston. And so there's a lot of history, really, and observation, and feedback, and experimentation. And most people that are healing do better on a low glycemic diet, low fruit.
Green-based diet.
Green-based, yes.
Right.
So we're not against fruit. You see papaya at breakfast, you see it at dinner, and there's green smoothies and so forth and so on. So we're not against fruit, but we encourage everybody to eat more greens, more microgreens, more sprouts, and also the baby greens and mature greens. You know, each has a little bit different nutrients and benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I see people that get better on fruit, but in my opinion, I see a lot more people get better on a vegetable-centric diet. And I would encourage you guys to eat more of a vegetable-centric diet. I see, unfortunately, a lot of people eat a lot of fruit-based diet, and they just, unfortunately, don't eat enough vegetables, especially the sprouts and the microgreens, some of the most important vegetables, in my opinion. So, Kaelash, another thing here at the Anne Wigmore Institute, you have the Living Foods lifestyle, and it's not the Living Foods diet, it's the Living Foods lifestyle. So besides just the food that we talked about today, what are some of the other components about the lifestyle that's really integral for health and for healing and for detoxification?
Good question. It really is a lifestyle. It's not called the Living Foods diet. It's called the Living Foods lifestyle, and there's many components. So one of them is exercise. Exercise is part of the program. This is not going to work unless you exercise. And the form that we teach here, we have these mini trampolines, these rebounders all over our campus, and we encourage them to bounce on them, even in the middle of the class. If they get tired or they just feel they need to move, they bounce on them. So we have those everywhere. So exercise is one, and also breathing. And colon care is very important.
Colon care.
And people learn about their digestive system here, and they learn how to take care of it in many different ways. So colon care, rest and sleep.
Very important.
And also a fast from all of those electronic devices. We encourage people to
very important.
keep that low as well. So there's many components really to this lifestyle. It's not just the food, and I believe the food alone cannot heal you. It's really the combination of things. And one benefit we have here where we are here in Puerto Rico is we're right next to the ocean.
Yeah, it's nice if we were in it today.
And to get all that natural, that air high in negative ions, to get that, and with the wind, and it's just, we don't use air conditioning here, so we breathe natural air. It's super quiet. All I hear are the bugs outside, the waves breaking. So that connection with nature too. And something that you can't get online is the connection, the human connection with people. So there's a synergy, there's a transformation that occurs in these groups of people that come here. They come here together for a reason, I believe.
And then they leave as friends after 2 weeks. They didn't know each other before.
In fact, some people, they become more intimate with each other in 2 weeks here than they are with their family.
Wow.
I mean, they share things like, how did your colony go over lunch? You know, would you talk about that with your brother or with your family? Yeah, you would, right?
Most people wouldn't.
So people, they feel so comfortable, and they just start sharing things, and they start to. You see, the first day they come all dressed up, and then they start breaking loose and relaxing, and they wear more comfortable clothes, and they feel like everybody's more easygoing, and people start to really like come out of themselves. They start to show the best selves of themselves.
Wow.
It is incredible. I mean, it's a privilege for me to work here, really, to see that every 2 weeks, to see people when they come
and get transformed.
Wow. This is really a life transformation program.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, if you guys are looking for some place to come, I would definitely encourage you guys to come out to the Wigmore Institute. I mean, you guys learn just a small portion of the living foods that they do here, but if you guys come, you'll learn how to grow your own sprouts, your microgreens, you'll learn how to make the sauerkraut, you'll learn how to make healthy, delicious living food treats in your own kitchen by the time you go home, because they have many different classes here. Plus you'll have time to connect with other people, because I know we all live online lives now and we watch videos and we don't really talk to people anymore. And you'll have time to do exercise and get a rebounder, man. You can do that at home while you're watching this YouTube video. You can be rebounding while you're watching my videos.
Exactly.
All right, Kaelash, I think we're coming to the end of this episode, but I want to give you guys, ask you a few questions about living in raw foods that I'm kind of curious about. All right, so here on the table that's been sitting here for a while, we got these earthbound carrots. These were grown in California, right? And they are shipped here. Are these living or raw foods?
They're raw at this stage.
Kaelash, but you say they're raw, but let's open up this bag. In this bag here, if we open it up, look, this carrot is growing. Is this living? It's growing the top. It wants to be planted. Look, the roots are coming out of this carrot. So I'll ask you again, is this living or raw, Kaelash?
It is, if you have a seed, it also has a vitality in it. And this one, I mean, you can see how it's starting to, get a little bit old and stuff.
Yeah,
so if you,
black.
You might be able
actually
to.
The tip.
It is not really fully alive.
But this is alive. It's growing.
It is alive, and in terms of nutrition, it's past its peak. It might be alive, and there's things that are alive, and not everything that's alive is good for you.
Yes.
Not everything that's living is good for you. Not everything that's raw is good for you either. I mean, you can eat things in nature, some berries and stuff, they might be alive, but they might kill you immediately.
Right. So let's talk about some other things. Some of my favorite fermented foods that I like to enjoy on occasion. For example, miso. Is miso a live food or a raw food?
It's a good question. Why don't we use miso here? We don't use it here.
Sure.
So we don't use it because it has a high salt content, and that's one of the main reasons. And many of the nutrients, they convert as you ferment the food, but the salt doesn't. It doesn't really break down. So if you eat miso, for example, it still has a really high salt content, and most people benefit from a low salt diet.
Absolutely. So yeah, they do have low sodium versions, but they still do contain some salt, and I do encourage you guys to get a low sodium miso. But that is a fermented food, and I would personally consider, maybe they don't by Wigmore standards, I consider it a live food because it still has enzyme activity.
It is a live food, I would agree.
So Kaelash, another food I like to eat on occasion is actually the natto. So the natto is basically just fermented soybeans, cooked fermented soybeans with the bacteria. Is that a live food or a raw food or a cooked food?
Okay, so I would consider it a live food. It has been cooked, but in the process of fermentation, it turns into living food.
Yeah, very rich in enzymes actually. Nattokinase. They sell in little capsules that are actually good for anti-inflammatory.
Yes, so some of the foods, there's so many foods out there, and in Wigmore, she chose a few specific ones to include into this lifestyle, which she chose also based on her observation and research, scientific research that she did, have the best healing results.
So there's Wigmore living foods, and then there's just living foods at large, and she may not use all the different living foods in this program.
And to take it one step further, there's new foods coming out all the time. And some of the things, if something comes out today, we're not just going to jump right on it and start giving it to our students. I mean, there's also a lot of students come here to do deep healing. So before we introduce something, we want to test it first on ourselves, and then maybe on a small number of students that are relatively well, before we introduce it to a large number of students. So there's new things coming out, and we are open to including more. And we do make changes. We have made quite a few changes over the last few decades.
So another thing I wanted to ask you about is I like to eat sometimes, is the tempeh. So most tempeh you would buy at a health food store in a little plastic package has been pasteurized, but in some places of the country, like when I was in Maui, you could actually get raw, unpasteurized, well it's not raw, it's unpasteurized Itsuki bean tempeh.
Okay.
So is that a live food, a raw food, or a cooked food?
Some of these ingredients themselves, like adzuki and soy, And Wigmore, she was very skeptical. It didn't really promote those very much. In fact, like the mung beans and the adzuki beans, even in their sprouted form, she said that they're really hard to digest. And they may have
their fermented form, they start to make easy to digest because that's what the fermentation process does.
Yes.
It starts to break the proteins down and add the enzymes.
They become easier to digest. And so I'm not so familiar with the tempeh,
sure.
And I don't know if that includes any salt.
No salt.
No salt. So
yeah, same thing with the natto, no salt. It's just fermented beans.
So some of us...
Yeah, they add some vinegar, I think.
Okay.
A little bit, just in the cooking, but it's residual.
It'd be great to have that laboratory. And
yeah, so if you guys are rich and Wigmore Natural Health Institute here is a non-profit, if you have lots of money and you want to donate some money for them so they could make that happen,
yes,
please do.
Our big dream really is to get that laboratory, and then I would have even better answers for you.
So yeah, those are some of the foods actually I've been including in my diet because I believe them to be healthy and I believe them to be living foods because they're enzymatically active, and also it's allowing me to expand my repertoire of the foods I eat. Instead of not eating a lot of beans, I could now eat the beans that have been fermented, and granted, fermented beans are one of the easiest ways to get the nutrients out of the beans because they've been already pre-digested from the fermentation process. So Kaelash, some other questions I want to ask, since we talked about enzymes a lot, and I know a lot of people out there have heard that when you eat enzymes, they basically get broken down by your stomach acid, so they're not important in foods. What would you say to that?
Well, they're broken down, but they're still being activated. So once they go through your system, your body still benefits from them. So they don't die off. You could call it they go into their dormant state, and your body will still benefit from them greatly.
Yeah, I mean, they have all kinds of different enzyme therapies where people take high doses of enzymes, and people do change and things do happen when they take high doses of enzymes, and that wouldn't happen if, the stomach acid or whatever neutralized them all.
Absolutely.
And so, once again, they need that lab to simulate a human stomach and the stomach acid and all these things. That'd be kind of interesting. So, any other comments or things you'd like to share with my viewers today, Kaelash, before we sign off about living foods, enzymes, and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, there's I'd say 3 things. One thing is start growing your own sprouts at home. It's so easy. Just get some seeds, make sure they're raw, they're viable, they're non-GMO, ideally they're organic. Soak them and start with something simple like chia. Soak the chia, and then blend it the next day, make a green smoothie from it. I mean, that's so simple, anybody can do it. You soak it for 4 hours, if it's outside the fridge, or 6 to 8 hours inside the fridge. You activate the enzymes, you blend the smoothie or use it. It should be blended to get the omega. So start doing that, and then maybe go to something that's a little bit more advanced. Maybe start with some fenugreek sprouts. They're a little bit more advanced, or some buckwheat, which we have here, the granola. Just choose something that's simple and start sprouting. So that's number 1. And number 2 is don't get discouraged. Just choose something and do that. Choose something that you like, oh, I resonate with this speaks to me, this I can do, and then do it. And even if you fall off the wagon, even if at some point you lose that habit, then just whenever you can come back to it, don't get discouraged. Studies show that more times we actually fail, the higher the chances that eventually we will succeed. So just keep coming back, keep reminding yourself, and start all over again today.
Yeah, tomorrow is a new day. You could start all over, start fresh, and leave the past behind. You don't have to worry about the past. And because today's a new day, the present and the future is where I believe we should concentrate. Another thing I want to encourage you guys to do is, especially if you guys are eating nuts and seeds, right? Soak them and activate them and start to sprout them before you eat them. It's super simple, just if you're going to eat some nuts at night, put them out in the morning, soak them in water, right? That'll start the process. And even if they're not fully sprouted, or even if they're something like macadamia nuts, they don't sprout, at least you're potentially activating them and removing some of the enzyme inhibitors and whatnot. And also you're going to dilute them down and actually make them more water rich, and they're going to be healthy for you and easier to digest anyways. And then even above and beyond that, like extra credit is actually turning those into the nut cheeses, right? And the yogurts. And we didn't even really get to talk about that. You want to talk briefly about the nut cheeses and the yogurts, Kaelash, and how important they can be instead of just eating the raw nuts?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a whole nut, it's really hard to digest for your system. If you soak it, it's easier to digest. Now, if you soak it and then you blend it with, we use the Rejuvelac, the cultured drink, you blend it with that, and then you let it ferment, all of a sudden it becomes really easy to digest, and you have the probiotics, you have vitamin C going up, you have the vitamin E, so many things are going up, and all of a sudden it becomes something that's really easy to digest and good for your health. It actually brings the friendly bacteria into your system. Instead of being a burden to your system, it will help you due to the enzymes and friendly bacteria.
Wow, it sounds like good, better, best to me. Like the nuts, hey, they're pretty good, but you can make them even better and even best by, soaking them, sprouting them, and then fermenting them. Wow, this has been one amazing episode today, Kaelash. If somebody wants to learn more about the Wigmore Institute, learn more about the program, even come to the program, come to meet you personally, and go to your classes here at Wigmore, how can they do that?
So we have a website. It's wigmore.org. I'm sure you'll put a link underneath.
Put a link down below.
And then our YouTube channel is Wigmore Natural Health Institute, and you'll also find us on Facebook, Wigmore Natural Health Institute, or just call, talk to the reservation staff.
What's the number?
787-868-6307.
Awesome, Kaelash. I'll put all the links down below to their Facebook and YouTube and website, and I'll put their phone number down below as well, so you guys don't need to write it down, or you can hit the reverse button and rewind and listen to that again. So let's see, I think that's pretty much it for today's episode. If you guys enjoyed this episode with Kaelash and going over why you should eat more living foods and not just raw foods, please give this video a thumbs up. That'll encourage me to get down to Puerto Rico again, make more videos with Kaelash for you guys. Also, be sure to share this video with somebody else that you know that eats raw foods. I want everybody who eats raw foods to eat more living foods, whether they're cultured, sprouted, or whether they're your own sprouts or microgreens, or even you're just growing your own garden. You guys can get more living foods and get more health benefits and increase your level of health. It's super important to me, and that's why I teach what I teach today, because I've been privy to this knowledge since I started, because I started out myself with many Wigmore books. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on any of my new and upcoming episodes. I'm coming out about every 5 to 7 days. You never know where I'll show up or what you'll be learning on my YouTube channel. And finally, be sure to check my past episodes, including the episodes I made with Kaelash himself there. I'll post links down below to the videos I've done with Kaelash. But I have over 450 videos on this YouTube channel dedicated to teach you guys all aspects on how to best eat a fruit and vegetable dominated raw living foods diet. So with that, my name is John Kohler with okraw.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep eating your fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, microgreens, sprouts, and fermented foods. They're always the best.